Hi viewers, what's cooking? On my end, it's Pacal with fire arrows! Okay, so I'm continuing the war with Pacal here. This video I'm not going to be finishing it up. He was actually a fairly large AI, and it's going to take some time to put him down properly. So, in the meantime, I'll get back to the comments. Now, the first one is sound synced up to the video? And I checked this, viewers, I wasn't sure. I did reply in the comments also, but I've checked since then, and yes, it's actually synced up in the video. The reason that it's not, it doesn't seem synced up is sometimes I choose to talk about things when it's not logical, I guess. So, I'll see what I can do about that. But, yeah, when I'm watching the war, when I actually mentioned, for example, the culture, forcing me to walk around because I closed borders, my units were still marching around in circles, and it was getting kind of old, so that's when I decided to start talking about it, even though it had already been happening on the video for over a minute, I believe. Well, anyway, that's that. I, just felt like talking about it at the time, I guess. Alright, next question. Since there's little food in plentiful hills, are you going to prioritize replaceable parts for windmills? By Death Turnip. He also asks about the economy I'm using and how it's going to hurt me since he believes I was relying on wealth. And it's true that I was relying on wealth to an extent. Probably the larger factor in my economy and what brought me to #1 briefly, even with all these financial human players in the game, I was still #1 for a little while, was actually my bureaucracy capital, which is working cottage-style improvements for commerce and getting the 50% base multiplier on that. And that city also has an academy and a settled great scientist. So between all those things, it's and it's commerce, it's base commerce, and then the 50% multiplier that you get for bureaucracy. It became a big part of my research for much of this game. Now, as for whether or not I'm going to replaceable parts, the answer is eventually. But right now, I'm going down the banking and then gunpowder, then steel line. Part of my logic for doing that was I was intending to permanently ally MLS. And unfortunately, as you'll see later, I forgot to check that option, and when I asked everyone, well, are these options okay? Well, they apparently forgot to check that option too, in a different sense, as in making sure it's on. So that's not possible. So it's going to be some time until I get to replaceable parts. But most of my cities can feed their mines, with the exception of some of the interior ones. And even though those aren't great, they at least have the Apostolic Palace hammers running for them. So it's still not terrible. And one of the benefits to going banking early on is that you'll see, once I start conquering cities, and I'm sure that the war is in hand, I'll switch off a lot of my cities that are building units right now, especially the ones with the commerce, like the floodplains there, and I'll switch them over to building banks with the 50% gold bonus, and that will help fund the vast increase in the number of cities I have. Compared to other options, that's actually one of the earliest available economy things, but the drawback is that it takes more hammer investment than other units. Okay, and just a moment ago I took Drill 4. That's the best promotion in the drill line. Most of the other promotions in the drill line are not too impressive. But Drill 4, I believe, adds 2 first strikes outright. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which is way better than the other drill promotions and really caps off that line nicely. Drill 4 is not quite as good as Combat 4, but it's very competitive, whereas the previous drills were not so competitive with an equal number of combat promotions. So I'm happy with that, but really, like I said in the previous video, my rationale for drill here is I'm protective, so I'm just going to stack up on the first strikes and try to take less damage with my unique unit. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Do I play any mods such as Fall from Heaven or whatnot? Unfortunately, I don't. I learned so much of the base game. For a long time, my machine did not handle mods of any kind. You guys might recall I had a long period of time where I was not doing videos even sporadically. It's just like a block of months where you didn't hear from me, and that's because my laptop that I originally did these videos on fried. and all I had was a desktop with like an AMD K6-2 old school processor, and I think I had maybe 512 megabits of RAM. I had a graphics card at like 64 megabytes. It was just the RAM was also megabytes. Anyway, it was just a bad setup for Civ 4. I'm surprised it even ran the thing. Well, I mean, it was an old machine. It was like 7 years old, so it was time to move on. But long story short, I really haven't checked out too many of the mods. The one mod I do play a lot, well, there's two. First, I play Buffy, which is a merger of Beyond the Sword and Unaltered gameplay, also known as Bug, and the original Hall of Fame mod. And that I do whenever I play in Game of the Month, or Succession Games of the Month, or when I'm making submissions for Hall of Fame for their gauntlets, for example. So I do use that mod, and there's also a mod called Better AI. I don't play it a lot because I mostly play forum games, and they don't run Better AI. So I don't do it as much there because I like things being more comparable. But yeah, version 1 came out recently, and it is a big improvement over the normal AI. I recommend checking that out. So if I had to pick mods, again, I don't play them very frequently, but now that I can do so, those are the two ones that I've played that I've really been impressed with so far. Okay, next up from Father Tuck. How many turns do you usually plan ahead in your games? For example, when was it clear to you that you were going to take the cities in this particular order? Well, I wouldn't say it's a fixed number of turns I plan ahead. I mean, pretty much I decided I was going to attack Pacal very shortly after I met him and realized where the other humans were on the game. So it was kind of like a developing plan from that point. As for the city order, I would just look at his land. Fortunately, I can see all his cities. The reason I can do that is I've been focusing espionage on him. And I just wanted to limit the ability for him to counterattack me with random stray units, so I didn't have to leave a lot of garrison behind. And ultimately I built enough units where I had a second stack, so I sent that in. But I'm going to quit building as many units here and start looping the guys who capture the southern city back up to the north. And that should allow me to finish off the war for the most part. But anyway, that's not going to be true in every game. Sometimes my objectives will vary very differently from just trying to minimize potential for counterattack. Like, just a crappy counterattack. Like, oh, these two maces attacked your one longbow and took the city back. And oh, look, now the AI's whipped the longbow. I hate that, but sometimes there are priorities that are greater than that. One of the biggest ones is if they have a strategic resource, such as iron or horse, while those strategic resources are still relevant, I'll want to cut those very early in the war. So I generally will go from whatever side of their empire that resource is closest to, and if it's not completely not practical, then I either will say screw it and just ignore that resource, or I'll just build units to counter the knights or whatever it is that they're allowed to build because they have it. But ideally, if I can easily get to a resource, pillage it, and keep them from ever hooking it up again, I'm going to do that. So that's one alternative approach I'll do. The other one is sometimes I'll be doing something like a horse archer war, where I don't want them producing a lot of spears, but I also don't want them producing a lot of anything, because I'm not relying on siege, but rather the ability to quickly capture their cities before they can react. So in that case, probably my biggest point in strategy is to go after their best production cities first. That way they cannot produce more units and stick them in my face. So those are the three I use the most. There's some special niche strategies, such as when I try to build up only for naval assault, like I'm going strictly amphibious. So I'll use fighters and marines and just circle them, taking all their coastal cities and either burning them or turning them into a colony or just defending them, depending on whether or not I think I can keep the cities, how much I want to harass the AI, and how much I care about screwing my Diplo over with vassal averaging. So there's that. And his other question is, he noticed that I always fight the enemy until capitulation or death of the enemy. And that's not an always. It has been on YouTube, but sometimes I will buy out of wars that are not going well to regroup, especially defensive wars, but sometimes offensive wars as well. So, if I think I can gain some kind of advantage like tax or strategic advantage by taking peace briefly, I'll do it. It doesn't happen a lot, which is why you haven't seen it yet, but I do end wars ahead of time. But there's also some risks to doing that, like peace vassals and other people getting capitulations or whatever. But anyway, that about takes me to the time limit for this video, so I will see you guys back in the next part. The main team, signing out.